All right, it's 5:05, and I think we'll just go ahead and get started. And as people will come in, if they've missed something, we can ask questions within the chat box. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. Aloha mai kako. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dr. Pahols Koskan. I'm a program developer at the College of Professional and Continuing Education here at Cal State Long Beach. I want to thank everyone who's joining us and our speakers for this webinar, Careers in Motion, Exploring Opportunities in Intermodal Logistics. Tonight you'll hear from Samantha Galton, who is a senior consultant at Russell Crowe Partners and a GLP instructor. Additionally, we have our special guest, Rob Canizaro, who's the executive director of OSEMA, founder of the Canizaro Intermodal Advisors, and a member of the Containerization and Intermodal Institute, CII. They'll both share insights into the exciting career opportunities within intermodal logistics and the skills needed to succeed in this growing industry. And if today's conversation inspires you, I encourage you to learn more about our Global Logistics Professional Certificate Program, which begins next month on August 21st and runs through December 12th. The program offers an industry-led, skills-based learning design to prepare participants for today's logistics and supply chain workforce. And as I mentioned previously in the beginning, at the top of the hour, if you have any questions, please feel free to message the panelists and myself in the chat function. And with that, I'll let Sam take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Pahol, and thank you for all of you for taking the time to join us this evening. So tonight, we're looking forward to providing you, as Pahol said, to like that window into intermodal logistics, into that space, and some career pathways within the industry. You're going to get a chance to hear about our own journeys, but in logistics, but also some perspective on the trends and career opportunities within the space. So listen, I don't have slides, or we don't have slides for this because it's meant to be more of a chat between myself and Rob and the stars of the show, which is you guys, right? The participants. So we really want this to be interactive. So like Rahul said, please, as we go through this, type your questions into the chat so that we can respond and really understand what it is that you would like to know about the industry or about careers or jobs or how we did things either way. So this is, like I said, designed to be interactive. We're ready for your questions. We have some prepared, but I think I'm pretty entertaining, but I'm not going to be entertaining enough to get us through an hour. So need your help with that. So as we start then, let's talk a little bit about intermodal. So just kind of as a very basic intro level into what is intermodal logistics, you can really think of it as encompassing the movement of cargo by multiple modes. So think of like vessels, ships, trucks, trains, things like that. So let's say, for example, I am what they like to call a sneakerhead. I love my shoes. I have over 200 pairs of sneakers. So let's take that retail company that is selling shoes. They may manufacture said shoes in Vietnam. So they would use a ship to stuff a lot of sneakers into maybe a 40-foot container, take that, put it on a ship. That ship then goes to the port of Long Beach. From there, it gets then on a train to go to Chicago. From there, it gets on a truck to get to their distribution center. And then from there, it goes out to either stores or to myself to be in my closet full of shoes that I like to say I do actually wear one pair every day. So I wear my shoes. For another example, maybe we are a company that manufactures washers and dryers, and we do that also in Asia. So we might stuff one box full of washers and one box full of dryers. It gets on a vessel, again, to the port of LA or port of Long Beach. From there, it gets onto a truck and goes to what may be called a transload center. It dumps all those washers and dryers into that transload center, gets reconsolidated back to get into a 53-foot, what we call domestic container. Then maybe it's put onto a railroad or to a train, gets a expedited train to Chicago. From there, again, gets trucked to a DC and then distributed from there. All of that, intermodal logistics in its plain, simple terms, right? So you can understand that intermodal logistics is part of our lives in any way, shape, or form. You look around wherever you are right now, it's touched an intermodal logistics chain at some point. So it's a very fun and very complex industry that I would say, and Rob, you probably would agree, was a little bit more undercover until COVID put a very big spotlight on what we do. I know like throughout my whole career, it was like, Sam, what is it that you actually do? And then by I think probably November 21, people were telling me how to do supply chain and they were telling me how I should be running the trains and things like that. So, but what COVID act did as well is it shed a light on a lot of our bottlenecks in the system, but it also, I think, gave people the opportunity and really bulked up our learning about supply chain and intermodal. And it really gave people the opportunity to learn more about the industry and to actually study it. So you're going to hear from us, like, there's a lot of people in our industry who just kind of fell into it. I know I did. But now you're in a place where there's actually programs, a lot of them, that you can learn about it, understand it, and then walk in with a little bit more knowledge maybe than we would have. Um, but just like a crazy statistic of statistics about like how many jobs touch supply chains. So just out of the Port of LA and Port of Long Beach, they support over 3.1 million jobs adjacent. Okay, over 250 or 240,000 of them are just in Southern California. And that's only from two ports. Now, granted, they are the largest gateway in the North America, but still, that's a lot of jobs. And what kind of jobs are those, right? So that's anything from operating the cranes that move the freight on the docks and the terminals to our truck drivers, planners, procurement specialists, lawyers, sales managers. Yes, I have a list and I'm going to keep going. Business development managers, any kind of operations, engineering. We still have people who are, actually engineering track or roadways, all of those things. Again, that's all part of the logistics community. Data scientists and emerging technology. We've got a lot of data out there, and we need people to be able to mine it and figure out exactly how to use it to then optimize our supply chains and optimize the way that we move. We need drone pilots. Crazy. I don't know if anybody would ever think about that, but the railroads were actually the first ones to get out of sight licenses to fly drones to then make sure that the bridges that they cross over and that their freight is secure. So drone pilots is another one. Network systems operators, I literally could go on for days and days and days. But all of these roles really make up the supply chain and they make them move. They make them move efficiently and they make them move so that we can have the stuff that we do. Okay, so that was a super, very quick, down and dirty. What is intermodal logistics? I'm going to turn it over to Rob now to talk a little bit more about his perspective on the industry and workforce needs and trends. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. And so much of what you said resonates with me. I wanted to jump in like 10 different spots because everything you said is so true and so important these days. A little background about me. We talk about how we get into this business. Some people get into it by accident. I came to this industry through shipping, so I trained as a ship's navigator at one of the state maritime academies. I happened to go to the one in New York, which is the oldest, and I'd like to think it is the best. However, what I found out through the course of that study is that I loved being at sea and I also hated being away from home. So I needed to find something where I could do both, stay connected with logistics, but also and transportation, but also be home every night and have a family and do those things that I really loved and felt were important to me. And that's how I found my way to intermodal transportation. When you say intermodal, I say container, right? So the reason for a container is to be able to move freight seamlessly between modes, trucks, trains, ships, whether those are deep sea vessels or barges or inland vessels. It's all about moving that cargo between modes. And one of the things that I found is so important to that particular fact is that despite the fact that some companies have ambitions to control more than one mode or all of the modes, in fact, most fail to do this. So that in order to move freight intermodally, you need to be collaborative because it's typically a BCO working with a trucking company, with a railroad, with an ocean carrier, and you need to collaborate with those folks. So what I found is that by flexing that collaboration muscle, I not only was able to perform better in my own career, but also it led me to a different career. And now I'd like to think of myself as a professional collaborator through the association space, which is where I spend most of my time when I'm not providing strategic guidance through my consultancy. So what's important in the world of trends and workforce needs in this industry? I think technology is so important today. We use it in our day-to-day lives. We use it in our business, and I'd like to think of this industry as data rich and information poor. So we have a lot of data. There's a lot of data sets, and transportation companies, supply chain companies have a lot of data, but turning that data into decision-making information is very, very difficult. And it's something that this industry, I think, is somewhat behind on. And that's why it's so important that data science comes to the forefront in this industry. And that's where additional education is required, because when I studied transportation and supply chain and logistics, we weren't thinking about the data science aspects of it. It didn't exist. This was 30, 35 years ago. But nowadays, we like to make decisions based upon fact-based data. We developed over the past 30 years intuitive thinkers, people that would know the way that machines sounded and the way that the operation looked, and they would have a feeling that something was happening somewhere, and they were very intuitive. But now you need to read the data and be able to see where the challenge is based upon the performance data and metrics that you have and set for yourself. So everyone's managing their business through dashboards and things of that nature. And that's really where additional education is required to get folks to the next stage of their careers. I would say that most important to note, technology in this industry is it's a headwind and also a tailwind. So there are a lot of entry level jobs that, in some respects, very simple tasks are being replaced by artificial intelligence and technology. However, folks that know how to use artificial intelligence and technology are in high demand. And if anybody's tried to play with ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, you know that the way you ask the question is very important to the way that it proposes the response to you. So you knowing how to phrase those questions and how to query the system to give you the results that you need and how to format that information when it comes out the other side is critically important. And that's where individual players can set themselves apart in the industry. So I'm going to stop there. Sam, I'll turn it back over to you. I know we have some other things you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, no, that's great. So can you tell us just a little bit more about your arc and like, you started with the Maritime Academy. Talk to us a little bit more about that career path of how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, I like to joke and say that it was a series of poor decisions, but I don't really mean that. It's just funny to say it that way. So as I said, I love being home, but I also love ships and transportation and moving cargo. So I decided to work for a shipping company, and I worked for one of the large shipping companies. We weren't the largest. We were actually on the smaller side. It was called Columbus Line, later
Mhm.
Hamburg Süd. Was eventually acquired by Maersk. Um, and I always focused on operations. So half of my career I was spent in shipside operations, managing marine terminals and ship networks, scheduling the vessels, planning the cargo on board, doing all those sorts of things. And my last role at Hamburg Süd was vice president of regional maritime operations for North America, which was a wonderful 3 years I spent on in that role. The other half of my career, primarily with Hamburg Süd, is managing landside operations,
Mhm.
managing truck and train intermodal, managing cargo readiness, load centering, getting that cargo ready to load on the ship, and equipment fleet management. So I did that for several years of my career. Actually, my first role was in equipment fleet management. And that is as much an art as a science. There's a lot of math, there's a lot of strategy. I had somebody ask me I would ever want to stay in equipment control and equipment management, because the only thing you're sure of is that you are rarely, if ever, right. So in equipment management, you either have too much equipment or
Right.
too little equipment. It's like throwing a ball up in the air. There's only one split second in time where that ball is not moving. It's hit its zenith and it's about to start dropping again. That's the only point where you have exactly enough equipment in your fleet. And then all of a sudden you have too little, too little, too little, too little, too much, too much, too much, too much. So it keeps moving, but you keep having to juggle those things. So I would say that I never met a job that I didn't like. Outside of operations, I spent 2 years as the risk manager. And I would say insurance was never my favorite thing, but I have a legal mind. Didn't go to law school, didn't train as a lawyer, but I like that logic. And I would say if there was a place that you wanted to learn about this industry, risk management and claims handling is one way to do it, because when things
Yeah.
go wrong, the first thing the claims handler has to know is what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
How does it look when it goes right? And then how does this scenario look compared to that? And then how do we find the difference there? So from there, I went to CMA CGM after Maersk acquired Hamburg Süd. I managed their equipment fleet in North America for a few years. And then I had the opportunity to join the Port of Virginia. Very interesting career arc for me, because now I was actually being interviewed by suppliers of mine, people that I did business with as a customer. And I said, well, the fact that they're even willing to talk to me says that they realize that I have an open mind and I was a good customer. And I mentioned that Hamburg Süd was one of the smaller companies. And I also mentioned that collaboration is key. Because I worked for a smaller company, I had to be very collaborative in my approach to vendors. And I couldn't just assert my position and say, I'm the biggest player in this game, and you need to give me this rate, you need to give me this time slot, and you need to give me this berth. No, it was about a win-win. How can we work my ships at your terminal so that it benefits both of us? So, my approach to that job was, I don't know how to run a terminal, but I do know what a terminal is supposed to deliver from a customer perspective. And I know how to manage large teams. They already had a team that knew how to manage the terminal. I just needed to make sure that it delivered what its customers expected it to. So it was very process driven. It was a large team, 400 non-union employees, and then up to 2,000 union employees among 6 terminals in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Had a lot of fun there. Then eventually that arc took me to become employed by some organizations that I had only previously volunteered at. One of which was the Intermodal Association of North America. So I was a board member there when they were looking to recruit a chief operating officer. So eventually I took that role, did that for a few years. When the opportunity to join OSEMA came to fruition. OSEMA is the Ocean Carriers Equipment Management Association. It's a group of the 10 largest ocean carriers involved in international trade with the United States. It's governed by a Federal Maritime Commission agreement, and it gives those competitors the ability to collaborate on operational and safety related issues. So that group can do something as small as endorse a best practice. It could do something as large as create a third party company to pool resources like chassis, which we actually did throughout the 2000s, created Consolidated Chassis Management, which at one point controlled more chassis in the United States than any other organization. Eventually, that company was spun off and sold. OSEMA still owns the South Atlantic Chassis Pool, which supplies chassis in Wilmington, Savannah, and Jacksonville, Florida, as well as some inland locations. And we hire CCM to manage that pool on our behalf. So really come full circle. And now I work at a place that I previously volunteered. But again, it's all about collaboration. It's all about working together to move our customers' freight in the most efficient, cost-effective, and safest manner possible.
I love it. So as a contrast to your math, that I hated it and I still hate math. And so I'll tell you a little bit about my journey that did not include math. So I like I said, fell into supply chain. I actually was going back for my master's um, at Villanova University to be like an organizational communication, whatever. I was going to be a consultant. Just decided I didn't want to learn anymore and clicked on the first job opening that I saw, which happened to be a um, corporate management trainee. And I said, okay, cool, I'll apply. And then I got an interview and didn't realize I applied for a railroad. And then I got through my second interview thinking that I was going to punch tickets at Amtrak. Not at all what I actually was going to be, which was a train master, which is, for everybody who doesn't know, is like a logistics manager for trains. So I planned what trains were coming into our facility, how they would be switched out, what customers we were going to switch, all of that jazz. None of which that I trained for. So if anybody has a degree right now and doesn't know what that you can do supply chain, because my degree was in communication. So really enjoyed my 5 years in operations. I think it set up such a fantastic support and foundation for what I was going to ever do next. I ended up going into sales and marketing and did national accounts with food and beverage. So I shipped carrots and frozen vegetables and things like that all on rail, which I never knew was possible. And then I was the port director. So I got to represent the BNSF Railway with all of the ports from California to Mobile, Alabama, doing high level strategy, business development. What do you want to be when you grow up? How do I help you do that with rail? Which was so impactful because I not only impacted the authorities, but also the surrounding communities. So it was a little bit of a government affairs job. It was a little bit of politics. It was just such a swirling, raging crazy of logistics and just managing personalities. So after that, I said, hey, 2020, why not just join a port? Sure, great timing. So I joined the Port of Long Beach, ended up being the managing director of commercial operations there. So I managed the tenant services and operations, business development, and security. Fantastic experience. I loved working for the Port Authority. Just great people there, but also just, again, being at that center of all things. So now I'm learning the terminal operations, I'm learning the trucking part of it, and I'm learning, getting to, put my spin on the rail piece of that as well. After that, I said, hey, startups, why not? Let's do it. So I joined a battery electric shipbuilding startup. So we engineered our own marine battery packs and started designing battery electric cargo ships. And then I joined another startup that did high-powered wireless charging for big pieces of equipment, so like buses, cranes, UTR, so like the little trucks that run around pulling containers. And then finally landed here doing what I think I love best, which is helping customers with their rail and understanding business development with rail, their strategy, projects, things, and focusing mostly in on that marine division. So my customers are ports, steamship lines, terminals, anybody who touches rail kind of on a water side. So I say this all to say to our audience, even just with the two of us, you can see the crazy paths that we took, but all of the things that we've done inside. And I really want to make sure you understand as soon as you get an entry point, you have then a myriad of opportunity within it. So like me joining the freight railroad community also then introduced me to trucking. It introduced me to the steamship lines. It introduced me to ports, but also introduced me to sales, right? Marketing. How do I rate the stuff that I'm actually sending? It then introduced me to technology. I had to work with network design. What I want to like really enforce is get your foot in the door wherever you are, and then learn whatever you can possibly learn, because you're going to be interfacing with just a crazy amount of people and jobs that once you get in, you're in, and you can really go wherever you want to go from there. Any other thoughts on that, Rob, before I ask
Yeah,
you different
Sam,
questions?
exactly. And what I loved about what you said is that throughout the narrative that you shared, which was so interesting because we've come to know each other a little bit, but I learned a little bit more about you in that overview of your career. But what resonated with me is that you continue to pause on the things that you learned in each of those stops on your career, and different opportunities provided different lessons for you to learn despite the fact that you were progressing, up the career ladder, you were continuing to find opportunities to learn lessons. I did the same thing, and that's a very informal thing, but it also can be a formal thing. So, one of the things I want to be sure that I share with the audience tonight is that there are always opportunities to continue to educate yourself. Most of your employers today offer some form of tuition reimbursement as a benefit. If you don't take advantage of that, despite the fact that going back to school is extra work, there is no question that it is. But if you don't take advantage of that, you're leaving money on the table. And it could be five, six, $7,000 a year. That's right there. Your employer is ready to give it to you. If I said that your boss is going to give you a $7,000 raise tomorrow, would you say, nah, I'm too busy to go and grab that money? Absolutely not. You'd go and you get it. Well, it's there for you in the form of tuition reimbursement, and most of you already have access to it. When I started to talk to my wife, because I was married when I went back to graduate school, and I said, I have this opportunity to go back to graduate school, the company will pay for it. And she said to me something that she continues to say over the course of our marriage. She says, you're not getting any younger, meaning go for it,
Go
right?
for
The
it.
time is now. I did that with the second master's degree. I went and got an MBA. Company paid for that one as well. So not only does your company likely offer tuition reimbursement, but there are other funds available in the industry. The Containerization and Intermodal Institute, of which I'm a board member and been very passionate about their mission, they provide industry recognition to senior leaders and executives through the Connie Awards, which we host in September in Long Beach on the West Coast. And then we host a lunch in December in Newark, New Jersey on the East Coast. And we honor somebody with the Connie Award, typically a Lifetime Achievement Award. And those events raise money for scholarships, some of which are used to support programs like the ones that are offered at Cal State Long Beach. There are other organizations like the Intermodal Association that I mentioned earlier that provide a significant amount of money for similar programs, and that those programs can be accessed through the school, through Cal State Long Beach. So feel free to reach out to the program managers that you already know are on this call and see what funds are available, because there are opportunities if you need a little extra money to help support your educational initiatives.
That's huge. That's huge. BNSF used to have this tenet of make development a priority, and I can't lie. I kind of thought, well, whatever. It's just one of those tenets that you like. But man, when I left, I was like, oh wow, no, that's actually something that's got to be ingrained. And anything and everywhere you can make development your priority, whether you're reading books, you're taking formal classes, you're getting that mentorship, you're networking, that is making your development your priority. And I think that's one of the things. Like, I was talking to my daughter, she's about to go to college, and she's in her senior year, and so we're talking about college, and I said, your job is to learn something, but your job is to network, because that's going to be a really great window into understanding what you want to do, but then also getting that next job. And that is making your development part of your priority, right? So like making sure you're learning the things, making sure that you're growing your network, and always just chasing that extra one little thing to learn about. Learn something new every day. Like it's so important.
Yeah,
Okay.
you said a key word, Sam, and I just have to stop you.
Yeah.
Mentorship. You have to absolutely find a mentor. They are there. There are people like us that are just looking for bright individuals that might be a little bit uh, earlier on their career paths, but probably remind us in some respects of ourselves when we were at that point in our careers. And we're looking for people to help and to guide and to help find the path. It's not always easy, but mentorship is important for the mentor and the mentee. So find someone whose career is something that you see you'd like to emulate, and see how you can get close to them. And it will likely be a symbiotic and valuable relationship for both parties.
Well said. All right, Rob, let's get into a couple more of these questions. What do you think makes a candidate stand out when you're hiring for entry-level positions? And what skills are the most difficult for employers to find?
Yeah. Entry level is really interesting because for me, in most cases, a bachelor's degree tells me that you know how to learn, right? I don't expect that a bachelor's degree has taught you everything I need you to know, but it says that you can learn, you can understand lessons that people are willing to share with you. And it also says that you are committed to completing a mission. And it's a long mission, 120, 130 credits, 4 years, maybe longer. It shows that you stick to a plan and you achieve. So that's the basics of what I'm looking for from your education at that point. Really, what I'm looking for in your personality, and it's so much more important, I say, and not to, sometimes entry level people, it's a career transition. They're going from one career to another, and um, they're not just that typical college graduate age of 21 or 22. But what I've said to people is they've learned all the things that I have hoped their parents have taught them.
Mm,
They're good human beings. They work hard. They're inquisitive. They're intuitive. They're dedicated. They're driven. They're personable. I remember an interview I had with a fresh college graduate, and when I walked in the room, typically these folks are deer in the headlights. They don't speak unless spoken to. They're a little nervous. They're sitting rigid. And this young man just said, "Hey, how you doing today? How's your day going?" And that resonates with me.
beautiful.
This young man is now with Maersk. He's on an international track, and he's a senior manager or a director at this point in his career. But it was things like that that stand out. He really set the tone of that interview, and it was very comfortable. He was relaxed. He relaxed me. Um, but that personality traits or those personality traits are what I'm looking for beyond the basic education.
Fantastic. And I do want to remind our participants here, if you guys have other questions, please put them in the chat. We do have more prepared ones, but again, would love your participation in this. Um, Rob, let's see, what opportunities in the industry are students not paying enough attention to?
It's an interesting question. I struggle with this one because I think it's all about getting your foot in the door. And I think that you need to be open-minded. As we both said, Sam, we've had these non-linear career paths. I like to tell people I spent 24 years with one employer, and during that time period, I never took my boss's job. I never succeeded the person that I was reporting to. It was completely disjointed. I moved from this department to this department to this department to that department, continued to learn, continue to grow, continue to find opportunities, but I never met a job I didn't like. People ask me, what was your favorite role? All of them. They all had things that I loved about them. They all had things that I wasn't the biggest fan of. Risk management, one of my favorite jobs. Typically, you're seeing people on a bad day when their cargo's been damaged or didn't arrive on time. There's a lot of emotions that are going on, not always the most pleasant. When you get your first summons and complaint to see that you're getting sued in a court of law, it's a little unnerving. When you get your 20th, it becomes routine, especially when you get your 20th that week. I'm just kidding. Didn't happen that often. But the point is, there are good and bad in every role, as long as it's not something that you're ill suited towards.
Right.
If it's a sales and marketing role and you are just an introvert and you prefer to work behind the scenes and you don't enjoy meeting new people and talking face to face, maybe sales and marketing isn't the role for you. Maybe you need a more analytical, data science driven job, something in accounting and finance. But otherwise, there are things to be seen in every role, and I wouldn't miss out on any opportunity to get a foot in the door.
Yeah. I would also add to that, like, you don't have to go far to get a job in logistics, right? Like, so I live in LA, right? So I have LA Long Beach right outside of my door, but I also live on like the northern east part. So if I drive maybe about 10 miles away, there's a just a total community of warehousing. So I guess what I'm saying is like, don't get so myopic in saying I have to go to like these centers of logistics to look for these types of jobs. They are everywhere. They are in rural communities. They are in cities. They are in ports. They're all over the place. So you really could just like throw a rock and you'll probably hit some kind of logistics job center, something like that. The last thing I would also say too is really emphasizing just to get that foot in the door. If it's not a perfect fit in your mind at that moment, don't discount it, right? Apply. And the reason why I say is apply is because maybe you don't get that job, but what you brought to the table is something that the HR manager is going to say, yeah, but you know what? Something else might pop up and they're going to call you for that job. And that's just like life lessons, I think, for anybody, not just in the logistics space. But for me, like I was a train master and I applied for a national accounts job. And the my HR manager said, like, you did great, but that's not the job for you. We need to find a different job. And she literally called me like a couple weeks later and said, hey, I found you the job. It's this job. It's the customer integration team. That's your job. But it's because I put myself out there, right? So try, get the interview experience, get your foot in the door, and then learn all that you can from your peers. And just know that it's a vast, it's a vast world of different opportunities that you can get to. I want to check the chat real fast to make sure do we have anything else there yet? Nope, not yet. Okay. Let's see here. Let's talk a little bit about AI. How is artificial intelligence and automation changing the skills that employers are expecting for entry-level professionals? And then where do you see the greatest need for human expertise?
Yeah, I already touched on this a little bit, and I would say, you know, generationally, there are misconceptions that younger people have toward older people. They come with some preconceived notions about what the older generations are and the way they think and the way they behave. And conversely, older people have the same misconceptions about younger people. But one of the things that we expect is that younger people are more in tune with technology than we are. You know, graduates today grew up with technologies that we were introduced to over the courses of our career. When I think back, my parents' generation, I mean, they saw the TV invented. You
Right.
know, my father bought his first four-function calculator for $300 in 1977. $300. And back in 1977, $300 was a lot of money. You know, $3,000 was a new car. So we've been adapting to technology as it becomes relevant, whereas younger people were born into it, so it's more intuitive to them. So there's some expectation that you're comfortable with technology, that you're a savvy user, and that you're going to bring some of that to the table. We also expect that in some respects, you have some of the old skills. You know, somehow through COVID, it became unacceptable to call someone without pre-approving that phone call. I send you a text. Is it okay if I call you? What time would be good? Before COVID, we would just pick up the phone and call someone.
Mhm.
And if you're not available, you don't answer.
Right.
So I say, I do this all the time, and I say I just boomer call you because I'm not going to ask for permission. I'm just going to call you. If you're not available, you don't pick up. You see that I called, you call me back, and it's perfectly fine. But I'm not going to waste my time asking for permission. So feel free to do those things. People look at that as a bridge between new skills and old skills, and some of the old skills are still relevant. This is a people business. It's a relationship business. You get things done. Remember, intermodal, there are a lot of people that play a role in moving your customers, our mutual customers' freight. We need to work together. Sometimes we have to talk to each other. So pick up the phone, feel free to boomer call them.
Yes, I'm gonna use that now, boomer caller. That's fantastic. I think I would add to that, like technology is a tool of which that we use to optimize. But what I've seen, especially in railroading, we are still a handshake business. We want to get out in front of our customers, we want to get out in front of our partners, see eye to eye, so that when we sign a contract, it's not just between two businesses, it's between the people. And I think one thing that we all have to remember in supply chain, just like you said, we are all connected and is very much a relationship based type marketplace. So like for now, like for me as a consultant, I get a lot of my jobs because of the people that I've known in my network, but because I've made those connections with those people. They know Sam Galton and the work that I've done and the connections that I've made with them, as opposed to all the things that I know. The first part is I know Sam, I trust her, and I can do it. I can't do that over the phone or text. I get out in front of those people. So just I think that's one thing to remember, that I think in the logistics space, I think we are still very much a hands-on, handshaking, connections type business. And then the last thing I'll say is just with technology, it is used as a tool. Like we know when somebody just uses AI and doesn't look and check their work. We know. Um, you've got to do the work still, right? And I think there's a big opportunity, though, for those of us who are coming into this who are a little bit more tech savvy, who understand how to use the tools and you know how to optimize, to be able to take all of our kind of legacy networks and our legacy technologies into the next step. One thing a lot of people say is like the railroads are the most arcane pieces, like most arcane technology, most arcane companies. It's not the it's not that much of a lie. There's a lot of ancient technology that's there, but we need people to be able to take these massive systems, right, and bring them in. But you still have to do that with the human touch. So technology is a tool. It is not the end all be all. So while I think that you need to learn all of that stuff, and it does bring a sense of, just one more thing on your resume that gets you a leg up, it's not everything. We learn by doing in the logistics. You can't learn everything just on a textbook or just even on a conversation. You've got to go through it. You have to live it, and then you can apply it. So just one more thing to add to that.
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
Sam, just one
Yeah.
second. When you talked about the importance of relationships, one of the other things, it's a relationship business, but it's also a reputational business. So it's a very small
Yes.
industry. We typically find our ways back to people over and over and over again, and you become known by your reputation. We also do things on handshakes. Sometimes we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with each other on a phone call. When we hire labor to work ships, those 8 hour labor guarantees, $2,000 and $3,000 and $4,000 an hour times 4 or 5 gangs. We do that by a phone call because we don't have time to send an email. Well, if the ship doesn't show up on Monday morning and you had 5 gangs standing by at 8 o'clock, well, that's burning at the rate of $10 to $15,000 an hour. It's very easy for that ship planner, port captain, to say, "Oh, I didn't say 8 o'clock. I said 1900. You misunderstood me." And you could do that. You could do that once,
Once.
only once, and then you'll never be able to do it again. So your reputation in this industry, because it's so small and because it's so interconnected, is critical as well.
It's a great
So
point.
you need to be cognizant of that.
That's a great point. Okay, so inside of the chat, I see it says, for someone transitioning into logistics from another industry, what transferable skills have you found to be the most valuable? And what practical steps would you recommend them take to position themselves for success? You want to take a stab?
Yeah, I love this question because it's actually a good opportunity for you to bring something into the industry that comes from somewhere else. So I studied transportation management when I was studying navigation at the Maritime College, and then I went back to the Maritime College to study international transportation management at the master's level. All the while, I was probably 15, 16 years into a transportation career. And then I had the opportunity to go and get an MBA. And I said, I want to do it. Why? Because I want to see if I missed anything being so specifically focused on transportation, are there transferable lessons that I can take from another industry or a general business concept and then apply to transportation? So if you come from outside the industry, you can bring something like that in, something that we haven't seen before, something that another industry develops, some idea, some concept, some technology, some tool, some way of thinking. So don't miss out on bringing those opportunities to the table. It's all about cross-pollination. You need to be able to take that bee and go from one flower to the other flower to the other flower to sort of mix it all up. So those are great opportunities. As I said already, we're very ingrained. It's a deck that we just continue to shuffle with people. So when we have new entrants, it's great that they bring their own experiences.
Yeah, I would add to that, you know, you bring your own lens. So I once had a boss who came from a very large retailer, who came into the railroad with absolutely no railroad experience, and I was like, this guy's not gonna last. Because railroading is hard. Like, yeah, it's only two pieces of steel, you go forward and back, but there's a lot of complexity with that forward and backward movement. And he did wonderful. And it was because he was able to bring this whole different perspective on just how logistics works, and different processes that he brought from his organization. His management style was very different than the railroad was used to. And it worked. It was actually a breath of fresh air because we got this whole new lens and perspective of how to look at the book of business that we were managing. And then we prospered. We really did very well. I did very well in that group because of his new leadership. So I think those that who are coming from a different industry, there's a big hurdle, right? There's some learning that you have to do, and as far as like what is logistics and getting into that, but that's no different than entry level, right? You'll get it because you know how to learn, you already know how to do things. You just got to pick it up and then inject what you know. And I think that's very important when you think of diversity of thought, diversity of eight, all of that diversity of you know, that we welcome into groups. Bring it because we need it inside of the logistics space, because there's a lot of people too who love to say, well, we just do things because that's just what we do. Challenge that, because it might
Every
not be the
time,
right thing to do, right, Rob?
absolutely. And to the point of this question, not only do you bring different skill sets and different thought processes from other industries and other companies, you also bring them from other departments. Some of the transitions I made in the same company from one department to another, I was able to bring a different idea or a different way of thinking, and that's why that cross-pollination was valuable. And Sam, I'm sure you did the same
Yes,
thing as well
absolutely.
in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have time for at least one more question. Let's try this. If you could look back to baby Rob in his first positions, what's something that you wish somebody would have told you when you started your career?
I think that when I was starting out, I was very focused on the rules and I was very somewhat closed off. I was working in ship planning. I was a port captain, and it was a very demanding job, nights and weekends, all hours, and in some respects, it was frustrating. But when I forgot about the box and focused on the customer, it opened my mind to realizing what was important, that this wasn't just a 40-foot cube or a 20-foot cube. This was somebody's freight, it was somebody's business, and they were paying us very good money in order to get it from where it was to where they needed it to be. Once I realized that, it opened me up to yes, and I became a yes man. And I say that in a good way. Being a yes person is a good thing. It's not that you say yes when you know things are wrong. That's typically what we mean by a yes man.
Mm-hmm.
But being a yes person means that you look for a way to say yes, right? Your customer wants you to say yes. Your customer wants you to find a solution to your problem, to their problem, or to your mutual problem. So find a way to say yes. I wish I learned that lesson probably 5 years before I did, because it would have opened me up and changed my career. From then on, whenever anyone on my team said the customer, I would say, who's the customer?
Mhm.
And if they didn't know, time out. Go find out who the customer is. We'll wait. I stopped meetings to go find out who the customer was. They come back in the room, it's Dow Chemical. Okay, not the customer has a 40-foot container. Dow Chemical has a 40-foot container. Now let's go figure out how to move this for Dow, right? Because that made all the difference to my mind. It became real. It took this box and made it somebody's mission.
It's fantastic. Um, I think if somebody would have told me that you can do all the things that you want to do and not change your personality, that would have helped me. And I will say this because there's a lot of pressure, I think, when you get around executives and you're just a manager or things like that, that you feel like you must conform to something to be able to move up or do the things that you would like to do. And I remember I had a conversation with an executive, and I was as personable as I thought I could be, and I just said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he was having some issues with his father, and I said, "I'm so sorry to hear that." And then I got feedback that I wasn't professional, and that crushed me. I went into this mode of I can't talk to anybody. I have to be serious all the time. I changed my whole personality until my mentor talked to me one day and he said, what is this? What is happening? And I said, well, I got this feedback and I don't know, like I can't do that. And he said, no, you do your job and do it the way that you need to do it to succeed. Like you have to understand that your personality is the way that is, and you're successful because of that. And I'm speaking to myself, right? And I was able to really capitalize that and use that to make better connections, to network further, to really put trust in my customers and really show that executive that no, this wasn't me being unprofessional, but it was me trying to be personable and like make sure you're okay as a human being. Like you said, Rob, like knowing your customer, right? Knowing your audience. So I think, let me say dot, 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 it's a know your audience situation, right? Like know who you're talking to and how you can talk to them, but also understand that you don't have to change everything about you to be able to get to where you need to be. And if I would have known that even while I was a train master, I think I would have done my career a little bit differently, and really just focused on my strengths, pull up my weaknesses, but do it all in the same way, right? I think I could have been a lot more successful a lot more quickly. So we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses to work on, but understand like you can do sales the way that you need to do sales. Personally, I don't fluff. I just get straight to the point, but I also understand which one of my customers have dogs, cats, kids, where are they going? What do they like to do on the weekend? All of those things so that we can have that conversation human to human and not so much business to business. I wish I knew that sooner.
Absolutely.
That
Sometimes feedback is wrong. Sometimes your
that's
boss
another
is
lesson.
wrong, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and and just because you heard it once, don't turn yourself 180 degrees. Now, if you continue to hear something over and over again, maybe there's some truth to it, and if you hear it from different people, but
Right.
sometimes feedback isn't true,
That's
right? And
correct.
it's good that your mentor saw that happening. You could also have asked your mentor, "Hey, I got this feedback. How can I manage myself through that situation? Because I don't want to stop being me. I don't want to stop being
Right.
curious about people and their lives and their personal lives. Um, but I want to be professional as well. How do I balance those two things?"
Correct. That's it. That's it. Um, okay. We have successfully come to the end of our hour together. We very much appreciate your time. Hopefully, this was helpful into some insights into the logistics market for careers and career pathways. Pahol, do you have that slide real fast? I do want to do plug real quick our GLP program. As Pahol said, I am one of the instructors. If this is something that interests you, this is a fantastic way to really get an overview of supply chain and the trends of global trade, but then also really dig into logistics management. So we give you like a real world use case. and you apply all the things that you learn in the first course into the second and really help a company really get through their supply chain woes. So it's a very hands-on and very experience-based type program, and would love to see all of your shining faces there. I teach a course just on overview of supply chain, and then I do a deeper dive into intermodal, specifically rail, and then I mentor on the other side for this project. So would love to see you there. If you have any questions, please reach out to Pahol or Anjali on the screen here. There he is. If you have any additional questions. Otherwise, Pahol, shall we say goodnight? I mean, I can say Boru.
Good
I just
night.
want to say a
Thank you.
mahalo to everyone, or mahalo to Rob, to you, Sam, for a very thought-provoking and insightful conversation. And, just to chime in really quick, feedback can be wrong, but also it can be a gift. So I think that, just take it as it is and learn from what you hear. So with that, thank you so much for your conversation and everyone for attending tonight's webinar. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
all.